I heard the knock at 2:47 a.m., 3 times, deliberate, like he already owned the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The building was silent except for the pipes groaning and Mrs. Chen's television bleeding through the walls. Some late-night infomercial promising miracles for $19.99. I'd been awake anyway, watching water spread across my kitchen floor like an accusation, the burst pipe above the sink hissing its judgment. One more thing broken. One more thing I couldn't afford to fix. An hour earlier, I'd called what I thought was my landlord's emergency line. Desperate. Broke. The kind of desperation that makes your voice shake even when you're trying to sound calm. But the voice that answered wasn't Mr. Kowalski's Queen's rasp. It was darker, smoother, like velvet wrapped around a blade. "You sound like you need help," he'd said. I'd hung up. Wrong number. Wrong everything. But he came anyway. When I opened that door, chain still on because I wasn't stupid, just unlucky, Dominic Carver stood there in a black coat that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Rain dripped from his dark hair, and his eyes were so pale they looked silver under my flickering porch light. The kind of eyes that saw everything and forgave nothing. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of presence that made the narrow hallway feel smaller. His face was all angles and control, beautiful the way a knife is beautiful, precise and dangerous. He shouldn't have known my address. He shouldn't have cared. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. But he looked at me like I was a problem he intended to solve, whether I wanted him to or not. "You called?" he said. Simple. Like it explained everything. Wrong number, I managed. But my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Behind me, water was pooling around my bare feet, and I was suddenly aware of how I must look. Tank top, sleep shorts, hair a mess, trying to hold together the last shreds of my dignity while my apartment drowned. "You need help. Not a question." He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Are you going to let me in, or are you going to flood the whole building?" I should have said no. Should have closed the door, called the real landlord, handled it myself the way I'd learned to handle everything since I came to Brooklyn 2 years ago. Alone, broke, determined to prove I could survive without depending on anyone. But something in his face stopped me. Not kindness exactly, more like recognition. Like he understood what it meant to stand in the wreckage of something you couldn't control and pretend you were fine. I opened the door. He moved past me with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, kneeling in front of my sink without bothering to protect his expensive coat. His hands were elegant, almost artistic, but scarred across the knuckles, hands that had built things and broken them. He shut off the water main with practiced ease, then stood, surveying the damage with those unsettling silver eyes. "How long?" he asked. 20 minutes? Maybe 30? He pulled out his phone, made a call. His voice shifted, still smooth, but harder now, all business. "Marcus, send a crew to..." He glanced at me. 437 Driggs Avenue, apartment 3B, I whispered. 437 Driggs, plumbing emergency, full repair. I want them here in an hour. He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and turned to me. "They'll fix everything. Pipe, drywall, floor, like it never happened." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they made me feel exposed. "I can't afford..." "I didn't ask if you could afford it." His voice was gentle, but there was steel underneath. "I'm handling it." Pride burned in my throat. Pride and shame, and the bone-deep exhaustion of trying to stay afloat in a city that wanted to swallow me whole. "I don't take charity." His mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. Something flickered in his eyes, almost like approval. "Good. I don't give it." He stepped closer, and I should have stepped back, but I didn't. Couldn't. "But I collect debts, Naomi. And now you owe me attention." He knew my name. Of course he did. Men like him, and I was beginning to understand exactly what kind of man he was, didn't show up at random apartments in the middle of the night without knowing exactly whose door they were knocking on. "How did you..." "The phone number you called belongs to me. So does the building across the street. And half the block." He said it matter-of-factly, like wealth and power were just facts of nature, inevitable as rain. I heard desperation in your voice. Fear. I don't ignore that. Why? The question came out raw. Why do you care? For a moment, something shifted in his face. Something that looked almost like pain. Quickly shuddered. Because someone should have cared before. The crew arrived exactly when he said they would. 3 men, professional and silent, who didn't ask questions or make small talk. They just worked with the kind of efficiency that came from doing jobs they'd rather not examine too closely. Dominic watched from my tiny living room, somehow making the space feel even smaller just by existing in it. I tried to busy myself, picking up the books that had gotten splashed, moving the waterlogged rug, trying not to think about the stranger in my apartment who felt less like an intruder and more like a storm that had decided to take shelter. "You're a bartender," he said. Not a question. "How?" He gestured to the Brooklyn Tavern t-shirt draped over my chair. "A good place. Decent owner. You work the late shift. Pays better." I met his eyes, refusing to look away. "And I don't mind the hours. Fewer people asking questions." "Smart?" He stood, moving toward the door as the crew finished. "They'll be done in an hour. Stay somewhere else tonight. The fumes." "I don't have somewhere else." He paused, hand on the doorknob. For a long moment, he didn't turn around. Then, "The Meridian Hotel, 10th Avenue, room 1147. It's empty. Use it." "I can't." "You can." He looked back over his shoulder, and his eyes were softer now, almost sad. "You called for help, Naomi, even if it was the wrong number, even if you didn't mean to. That takes courage. Don't waste it on pride." He left then, but stopped in the doorway. His hand moved to my wrist, barely a touch, just his fingers against my pulse point, warm and certain. The contact lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4. Long enough for me to feel the calluses on his fingertips. Long enough to see something complicated and dangerous move through his expression. "From now on," he said quietly, his voice dropping into something that felt like a promise and a threat. "No one touches you." Then he was gone, disappearing into the stairwell like smoke, leaving me standing in my flooded kitchen with a racing heart and the growing certainty that I'd just made a deal I didn't understand. I didn't go to the hotel. Pride, maybe, or fear. But I did find the keycard he'd slipped into my jacket pocket, and the phone number written on the back in precise handwriting. And when I finally fell asleep at dawn on Mrs. Chen's couch, she'd taken pity on me, insisted. I dreamed of silver eyes and wrong numbers that felt eerily right. 2 days after Dominic Carver fixed my pipe and disappeared into the night like some well-dressed ghost, I acquired a shadow. His name was Marcus, and he was impossible to miss. 6'4" of controlled intimidation wrapped in a charcoal suit, standing across the street from my building like a sentinel. He didn't try to hide. That was the point, I realized. The message wasn't subtlety. It was presence. I lasted until my lunch break before I cracked. The phone he'd left on my counter, sleek, black, with exactly 1 number programmed into it, sat heavy in my jacket pocket as I crossed Driggs Avenue. Marcus didn't move, just watched me approach with the kind of patience that suggested he'd waited out longer standoffs than this. "Tell him to call off the babysitter," I said. Marcus's expression didn't change. "He doesn't take orders from me, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." "I'm 26. "Yes, ma'am." I wanted to throw something. Instead, I pulled out the phone and called the only number it knew. He answered on the first ring. "Naomi." Just my name, but the way he said it made something in my chest tighten. Like he'd been waiting. Like he'd known exactly when I'd break. "I didn't ask for a bodyguard," I said, trying to sound firm instead of flustered. "No." His voice was calm, maddeningly reasonable. "You didn't ask for a lot of things. A functional pipe, a dry floor, safety." A pause. Waited. "But someone's asking questions about you, Naomi, and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet." The words hung between us, promise and prophecy. "But you called me. You let me in. You took my help. That makes you my responsibility." The possessiveness should have terrified me. Should have sent me running, reminded me of Jason's suffocating control, the way he'd slowly tightened the leash until I couldn't breathe without permission. But this felt different. Dominic's protection didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a shield I hadn't known I needed. "What questions?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. The kind that make me concerned. His tone shifted. Harder now. "Marcus stays." This isn't negotiable. He hung up before I could argue. I tried to live normally after that. Went to work at Brooklyn Tavern, poured drinks for hipsters and construction workers, pretended I wasn't hyper-aware of Marcus's presence in the corner booth, nursing the same beer for 4 hours. Pretended my hands didn't shake when strange men looked at me too long. Pretended I didn't scan every face for signs of recognition, threat, intent. But the questions came anyway. First from Jenna, my coworker, leaning against the bar during the slow hour between happy hour and dinner rush. So who's the suit? Boyfriend? Ex? Parole officer? None of the above. Right. Because normal people definitely have bodyguards at dive bars. She studied me with the shrewd attention of someone who'd learned to read people for survival. You in trouble, Naomi? I don't know, I admitted. And that was the truth. I didn't know what Dominic was protecting me from, or why he cared, or what it meant that I'd started to feel safer knowing Marcus was nearby. The photo arrived on my 3rd night of supervised existence. Someone slipped it under my door while I was at work. Marcus had walked me up, checked the apartment, then positioned himself in the hallway like always. But whoever delivered it had gotten past him somehow, or known exactly when to move. The photo was simple. Black and white, grainy, taken from across the street. Me, walking home from the subway, 3 nights before I'd called that wrong number. Before Dominic, before any of this started. My hands went numb. The note was printed on plain paper, block letters that gave nothing away. Tell Carver we remember what he took. I called him. My voice barely worked. He arrived in 12 minutes. I timed it, watching the clock because focusing on something concrete kept me from spiraling. Marcus let him in without a word. And then suddenly Dominic was there, filling my small apartment with that particular intensity he carried like a second skin. He took the photo from my shaking hands. His face went so cold I felt the temperature drop, all that careful control crystallizing into something lethal. When was this taken? His voice was soft, dangerous. 3 nights before the pipe burst, before I called you, before I even knew you existed. He studied the image with the focus of someone reading a declaration of war. You were chosen as a message, he said finally, quietly, like the words cost him something. And whoever sent this just made their last mistake. Chosen for what? A message about what? My voice cracked. I don't understand any of this. I'm nobody. I pour drinks and pay rent and try not to think too hard about my life. Why would anyone care about me? Dominic looked up then, and something in his silver eyes made my breath catch. Not pity. Recognition. Like he understood exactly what it meant to be somebody's target, somebody's message, somebody's collateral damage. Because I care, he said simply, and that makes you everything. He reached for me then, not to comfort, but to ground. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone, and the touch was so gentle it hurt. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. We need to have a conversation about who wants to hurt me badly enough to hurt you first. The warehouse in Red Hook smelled like salt and secrets. Dominic brought me here at midnight, through streets that got progressively darker, progressively emptier, until we were somewhere Brooklyn kept hidden from tourists and trust fund transplants. The building looked abandoned from the outside, rusted metal, broken windows, the kind of place you walked past quickly and didn't ask questions about. Inside was a different world entirely. The main floor stretched vast and industrial, exposed brick and steel beams, but renovated with the kind of money that whispered instead of shouted. Men in suits moved through the space like sharks in dark water, conversations conducted in low voices and multiple languages. I caught fragments. Russian, Italian, Mandarin, words I didn't understand carrying weight I could feel. Money moved here. Power. The kind of business that happened in shadows because daylight would expose too much. Dominic's hand stayed at the small of my back as he guided me through it all, up a steel staircase to a glass-walled office overlooking the operation below. His kingdom, I realized. This was where he ruled. Sit, he said, not unkindly, gesturing to a leather chair. I sat. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my spine straight, my face calm. I'd learned that much from Jason. Never let them see you're afraid, even when you're terrified, especially then. Dominic poured 2 glasses of something amber and expensive, handed me one. I took it but didn't drink. He noticed. Of course he did. This man noticed everything. 3 months ago, he began, standing at the window with his back to me, silhouetted against the city lights beyond. I dismantled an organization. The Volkov Bratva, Russian mob with roots in Brighton Beach, tentacles everywhere else. They controlled prostitution, protection rackets, smuggling. They also had a taste for things I won't tolerate. His voice went flat. Human trafficking, children. My stomach turned. I took their territory, their connections, their money. He turned to face me, and his eyes were winter itself. And I took their pride. Viktor Volkov ran that empire like he was untouchable. I proved he wasn't. You killed him. Not a question. I ended his operation. A distinction without a difference. But his lieutenants survived, scattered, angry. And now they're rebuilding, using my own tactics against me, trying to prove I'm vulnerable. He moved closer, crouched in front of my chair so we were eye level. They think you're my weakness, Naomi. I'm not, I said, but my voice shook. His hand found mine, squeezed gently. No, but you could be. He showed me then what protection looked like in his world. Pulled out a laptop, opened files I probably wasn't supposed to see, surveillance footage of my building from multiple angles, timestamps going back weeks. Men I didn't recognize watching my window, following me to work, tracking my routine with methodical precision, phone records, calls I'd made, including that wrong number, text messages, credit card purchases. Someone had been studying me like homework. They knew everything about you before you called me, Dominic said quietly. They orchestrated the pipe bursting, hacked the building's emergency contact list, rerouted it to my private line. They wanted you to reach out to me specifically. The room tilted. Why? Because they're smart enough to know that the best way to hurt me isn't attacking my businesses or my people. It's making me care about someone I can't completely protect. His jaw tightened. And somehow they knew I'd come if you called. That I'd care. How could they know that? You didn't even know me. Something complicated moved through his expression. Guilt, maybe, or regret. No, but I knew of you. You work at Brooklyn Tavern. My daughter's godfather owns it. Tommy mentions his staff sometimes. The girl who takes extra shifts to help with rent, who reads Neruda during breaks, who's kind to the old men who nurse one beer all night. He touched my face, achingly gentle. Who's running from something but trying so hard to build something new? Tears burned my eyes. I blinked them back. They've been watching me for weeks, I whispered. Studying me. Planning this. Yes. And you? I've been watching you for 3 weeks, since Tommy mentioned the new bartender who reminded him of his sister. Kind but cautious, like she'd learned the world bites. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I didn't plan this, Naomi. But I'm not sorry you called. The admission settled between us, heavy and honest. He kept talking, showing me maps of my neighborhood marked with surveillance points, transcripts I couldn't bear to read. The violation felt physical, like hands I couldn't see had been touching me for months. I felt dirty, exposed, furious. Why didn't you warn me? I demanded. Because until the photo, I didn't know they'd escalated. I thought I had more time. Time for what? To figure out how to keep you safe without making you a prisoner. I stayed at Dominic's penthouse that night because going home felt like walking back into a trap someone else had set. The apartment occupied the entire 43rd floor of a building in Tribeca. All glass walls and carefully curated emptiness. Expensive art on the walls. Abstract pieces that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. A kitchen that looked like it had never been used. Furniture that was beautiful and cold, chosen by someone who valued aesthetics over comfort. It felt like a mausoleum for a life he didn't actually live. He put me in the guest room, ensuite bathroom, king bed with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than my credit score. Sleep, he'd said. We'll figure out next steps in the morning. But I couldn't sleep. Neither could he, apparently. At 4 a.m., I found him in the living room, sitting in the dark with a glass of whiskey, staring out at the city spread beneath us like conquered territory. The skyline glittered, indifferent to the small dramas of people like us trying to survive its weight. Can't sleep, he asked without turning around. Funny thing about finding out you've been stalked for months. It doesn't exactly inspire restful slumber. I moved to the window, kept distance between us. Your place is nice. Cold, but nice. It's not a home. It's a fortress. He finally looked at me, and in the darkness, his eyes looked almost translucent. I don't bring people here, Naomi. You're the second person to see this apartment in 3 years. Who was the first? My daughter, Elena. She's 8. His voice softened in a way I hadn't heard before, all that careful control melting into something achingly human. She lives upstate with her mother, my ex-wife, somewhere safe, somewhere my world can't touch her. The admission felt like trust, fragile and unexpected. Why did you leave? I asked quietly. I didn't. She did. Took Elena and went somewhere I can't follow because following would bring danger with me. He took a long drink. I see my daughter twice a month in supervised visits arranged through lawyers. I send money. I make sure they're protected. But I'm not her father anymore. I'm the monster who pays the bills. Something in my chest cracked. I recognized that particular grief, the loss of being someone's person, the knowledge that love sometimes means staying away. She's why you do this, I said, not a question. She's why I do everything. Every territory I take, every deal I make, every threat I neutralize. It's insurance. Building a world safe enough that maybe someday she can know me again without it destroying her. We sat in silence for a while, 2 broken people drinking expensive whiskey at dawn, pretending the view made us powerful instead of small. Then I said what I'd been thinking since the warehouse. We need rules. He raised an eyebrow. Rules. You don't get to control my life because some Russian gangsters are playing games. I won't be a prisoner, Dominic. I've been that before. I'd rather die than do it again. The words came out harder than I intended, sharpened by memories of Jason's slow suffocation, the way he'd isolated me degree by degree until I couldn't remember who I'd been before him. Dominic studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. 3 rules from me. You tell me where you go. You don't leave Marcus's sight when you're outside, and you trust that everything I do is to keep you breathing. 1 rule from me, I countered, lifting my chin. You tell me the truth. All of it. No protection through ignorance. No secrets because you think I can't handle it. Or I walk into traffic and make it someone else's problem. The air between us crackled with something electric and dangerous. Then he laughed, actually laughed, low and genuine, the sound transforming his face into something younger, less haunted. You're the first person in 10 years to threaten me with suicide as negotiation. Is it working? Terrifyingly well. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and something in his posture shifted from guarded to open. Okay, Naomi Rivera. You want truth? Viktor Volkov isn't dead. I thought he was, but the evidence suggests otherwise. He's been rebuilding in the shadows, and he's patient, methodical. He spent 3 months setting you up as my pressure point before ever making contact. My blood went cold. He's alive, and he knows exactly how to hurt me now. Dominic's hand found mine in the darkness, his thumb tracing my knuckles. But here's what he doesn't know. I don't lose. Not territory, not respect, and not you. The possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, something warm unfurled in my chest, dangerous and desired in equal measure. That night, exhaustion finally won. I fell asleep on his couch, my head against his shoulder, his jacket draped over me like a blanket. When I woke at noon, there was coffee on the table and a single key beside it. What's this? I asked, finding him in the kitchen. Safety deposit box, Chase Branch on Canal Street. His voice was carefully neutral. If something happens to me, everything you need is in there. Money, passports, contacts, Dominic, just in case, he said. That's the rule. I tell you the truth. The truth is this world is dangerous, and I need you to be able to run if it comes to that. I picked up the key. It was warm from sitting in the sunlight streaming through the windows, solid and real and terrifying. That afternoon, curiosity won. I went to the bank, Marcus shadowing me like always. The box was small, the contents simple, a USB drive and a folded note. The note was in Cyrillic script, elegant and flowing. I couldn't read it, but I recognized handwriting when I saw it. Personal, intimate, the kind of script someone uses for important messages. I brought it to Dominic that evening. His face went white when he saw it, all the blood draining like someone had opened a valve. That's Victor's handwriting, he whispered, fingers trembling slightly as he touched the paper. He's alive, and he wants me to know he's close. The USB drive contained 90 seconds of video that shattered everything I thought I understood about coincidence. Dominic plugged it into his laptop with hands that weren't quite steady, and we watched together in his office, the door locked, Marcus stationed outside. The footage was grainy, shot on what looked like a phone camera in low light, but the face was unmistakable. Viktor Volkov, alive, smiling. He sat in what appeared to be a modest apartment. Floral wallpaper, outdated furniture, the kind of place that could be anywhere or nowhere. His face was older than in the photos Dominic had shown me, more lines around the eyes, gray threading through dark hair. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and deeply amused. "Hello, Dominic," he said in accented English, each word carefully pronounced. "You thought you buried me in that warehouse fire. Very thorough, very dramatic. But I've always been a patient man. And patience, as you're learning, is its own form of power." The camera shifted, panning slowly. My apartment building filled the frame. My window on the 3rd floor, curtains open, me visible inside moving around my kitchen. The timestamp read 3 months ago. A Tuesday evening. Unremarkable, me making dinner and reading a book. Completely unaware I was being documented. "I've been watching her longer than you have," Viktor continued, voice warm like he was sharing a pleasant secret. "Naomi Rivera, born in Phoenix, moved to New York 2 years ago after leaving an unpleasant situation, works hard, keeps to herself, reads poetry. She's perfect for this, really. The girl you didn't plan for. The variable that ruins everything." My breath stopped. Dominic's hand found mine, squeezed hard enough to hurt. "She's your weakness now," Viktor said, and the camera zoomed in on my face through the window, freezing the frame. "The thing you can't control. The person you'll break yourself trying to protect. I engineered this perfectly, didn't I? The leak, the phone number, the timing. I knew you'd come. Men like us, we can't help ourselves. We see something fragile and we think we can keep it safe." The video cut to black. Then Viktor's face again, closer now, intimate. "But nothing stays safe in our world, old friend. You taught me that." The screen went dark. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in my ears. 3 months, I whispered. "He's been watching me for 3 months, before the phone call, before you. He planned all of this. He engineered the entire thing." Dominic's voice was hollow, each word scraped raw. "The pipe bursting, the rerouted number, the timing. He wanted you to call me, wanted me to get involved, to care." The realization hit us simultaneously, devastating in its simplicity. I wasn't collateral damage. I was the plan. My past came roaring back then, the thing I'd been running from for 2 years. The memories I'd tried to bury under new names and new cities, and the desperate hope that geography could create distance from trauma. Jason, my ex. 3 years of psychological warfare disguised as love. 3 years of "I'm just worried about you, and I'm just trying to help," while he slowly isolated me from friends, family, myself. He controlled what I wore, who I saw, when I left the apartment. He never hit me, didn't need to. His weapon was subtler. Disappointment, silence, the constant threat of abandonment if I didn't comply. By the end, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a satellite orbiting his needs. It took my sister flying to Phoenix and physically removing me while he was at work for me to escape. Took changing my name, my phone number, my entire life. Took therapy I couldn't afford, and nightmares I still couldn't shake. Dominic saw it in my face, watched me fragment in real time. "Tell me," he said gently, pulling me against him. So I told him. Everything. The slow suffocation. The day I realized I'd become someone I didn't recognize. The terror of leaving. The bigger terror of staying. The guilt that still whispered maybe I'd deserved it. Maybe I'd been too sensitive, too difficult, too broken. "Viktor found him," I said, voice breaking. That's how he knew I'd be vulnerable. That's how he knew exactly what would make me reach out when I was desperate. Dominic's arms tightened around me. "Where is Jason now?" "I don't know. I changed everything. Made sure he couldn't find me. But Viktor could." His voice went lethal. "Viktor found him. Used him to research you, to understand your patterns, your fears, your triggers. The thought made me sick. Dominic's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, face going carefully blank as he read whatever message appeared. Then he turned the screen toward me. Unknown number, a video link. Don't, he started, but I was already clicking it. Couldn't stop myself. Needed to know. Jason's face filled the screen, and for a moment I was 23 again, trapped and terrified. Then I saw the rest. He was tied to a chair in what looked like a basement, face bruised, blood crusting under his nose. His eyes were wide with animal fear. Victor's voice came from off-camera, pleasant and conversational. Hello again, Naomi. I hope you're watching with Dominic. I want you both to understand the situation clearly. The camera panned to show Victor himself, standing beside Jason with one hand on his shoulder like they were old friends. This is Jason Fletcher. You know him, of course. He was very helpful in understanding you. Told me everything about your patterns, your fears, how you think when you're cornered. Victor's smile was gentle. In exchange, I promised him a way back into your life. Poor man still thinks he loves you. Obsession is so often mistaken for devotion, don't you think? Jason tried to speak through the gag. Victor ignored him. Here's how this works. You have 48 hours to decide who matters more, your past or your future. Dominic can save Jason, prove he's the hero you think he is. Or he can save himself, his empire, his carefully constructed world. Victor leaned closer to the camera. But he can't do both. Someone has to burn Naomi. You get to choose who. The video ended. The silence in Dominic's office was absolute, broken only by my ragged breathing and the distant sound of traffic 43 floors below. He's using Jason as bait, I finally said. Forcing you to choose between saving someone from my past or protecting your present. It's not a choice. Dominic's voice was steel. I don't negotiate with, he's already dead, isn't he? The words came out flat. I knew the answer. Could see it in Dominic's careful expression. Victor's not giving us 48 hours. He's giving us time to suffer before he kills Jason anyway. Probably. I should have felt something, horror, grief, the complicated pain of watching someone who hurt you get hurt in turn. But all I felt was numb, hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only the shell. I need air, I whispered. Dominic let me go to the balcony, but followed, standing close enough that I felt his presence like gravity. The November wind was cold, cutting through my clothes, but I welcomed it, wanted to feel something physical, something real. I was studying to be a teacher, I said suddenly, surprised by my own voice. Before running, I wanted to help kids learn to read. Thought I could make a difference. You still can. Can I? I turned to face him, and something in me cracked open. Look at what I've become. A target, a message, a piece in someone else's game. I ran from one controller and ended up in the crosshairs of another. It's not the same. His hand cupped my face with devastating gentleness. Jason tried to own you. Victor wants to destroy you. But me. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I just want you to survive long enough to remember you're not a thing to be controlled. You're a person who deserves to live without fear. The words broke something loose in my chest. Tears finally came, hot and angry and relieving. We stood there as the city glittered below us. Two people trying to figure out how to protect each other from threats we couldn't fully see. And in that moment, something shifted between us. From protection to partnership, from obligation to choice. His phone buzzed again. Another message. This time when he read it, his entire body went rigid. Naomi. But I'd already seen his screen. Another video notification. I grabbed the phone before he could stop me, clicked the link with shaking hands. The video showed the balcony we were standing on, showed us, right now, in real time. The camera zoomed in on our faces, close enough to see the tear tracks on my cheeks. The tension in Dominic's jaw. Victor's voice came through with crystal clarity. Beautiful moment, very touching. I especially liked the part where she confessed her dreams. The teacher who wanted to help children. So pure, so doomed. The audio quality was too good, too clear, which meant, he's listening, I breathed. He's been listening to everything. The video continued. Footage of us in Dominic's office moments ago, watching the first video, audio of our entire conversation, every word, every confession, every strategic discussion. Then the perspective shifted. News footage, police scanner audio, a newscaster's solemn voice, evidence linking prominent businessman Dominic Carver to multiple homicides. The screen filled with documents, financial records, transcripts, photos of Dominic meeting with known criminals, and woven through it all, my voice. Audio clips of me saying things I'd said, but edited, rearranged, made to sound like I was complicit, like I knew about the violence, like I'd helped plan it. Victor's face appeared one last time. The police receive this evidence in 1 hour unless you do exactly as I say. And Naomi, he smiled. You're either his victim or his accomplice. Choose carefully which story you tell, because one way or another, you're going to testify about Dominic Carver's crimes. The video ended, and I realized with sickening clarity, Victor hadn't just made me Dominic's weakness. He'd made me his only witness, the person who could save him or destroy him with a single statement to the police. Dominic became someone else after that video. All the careful humanity I'd glimpsed burning away until only the architect of violence remained. He made 17 phone calls in the first hour, each one conducted in a language I didn't speak, his voice stripped of emotion. Russian, Italian, Mandarin. The words meant nothing to me, but the tone was universal. Orders given by someone who expected absolute obedience. Men appeared at the penthouse, silent, efficient, dangerous, carrying equipment I didn't want to understand. Laptops, phones, weapons wrapped in cloth. I sat on the couch and watched my life become a war room. We have 47 minutes before Victor sends that evidence to the police, Dominic said, not looking at me as he studied 3 computer screens simultaneously. He's given us just enough time to panic, not enough to think clearly. That's intentional. What happens when the police get it? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Best case? I'm arrested. Spend years fighting fabricated charges while my businesses collapse and Victor fills the vacuum. He finally met my eyes. Worst case? They decide you're complicit. Accessory to murder. You go down with me. The room tilted. I haven't done anything. The evidence says otherwise. His jaw tightened. He's edited audio of you brilliantly. Made it sound like you knew about the warehouse fire, about territorial disputes, about eliminations. Any lawyer would argue you were coerced, but the optics alone would destroy you. Marcus appeared in the doorway. We found the listening devices, 12 of them, apartment, office, car, even the balcony. He's been recording everything for 6 days. 6 days. Since the moment I'd arrived at Dominic's penthouse, every word had been documented, every confession, every vulnerable moment. Victor had built his trap with our own voices. Can we trace the transmission? Dominic asked. He's routing through 7 countries. We'd need days to track it. We have 39 minutes. I stood, moved to the window because staying still felt impossible. The city stretched below, millions of people living ordinary lives, unaware that 43 floors above them, someone was deciding between survival and morality. What if I go to the police first? I said quietly. The room went silent. Naomi, listen to me. I turned to face Dominic and something in me solidified, all the fear crystallizing into clarity. What if I tell them the truth? That Victor orchestrated this, that he's using me as leverage, that the evidence is fabricated. They won't believe you. Victor's been too careful. Dominic crossed to me, his presence overwhelming. The moment you walk into a police station, he'll release everything. You'll be arrested on the spot. Then you have time to disappear. Take Elena somewhere safe. Let me take the fall. No. The word came out harsh. Absolute. I don't sacrifice innocence, not even to save myself. I'm not innocent anymore. The admission hurt. I stayed. I listened to your plans. I let Marcus protect me knowing what that meant. I'm already complicit by proximity. You're a victim. I'm a choice. I stepped closer, and for the first time since meeting him, I felt like we were equals. Victor wants you to either abandon me or destroy yourself saving me. But there's a third option. I volunteer information that protects you while exposing him. Dominic stared at me like I'd suggested suicide. That would require you to lie to federal agents, to falsify testimony, to become actually guilty of obstruction. Yes. Why would you do that? The question hung between us, weighted with everything we hadn't said. Why would I risk my freedom for a man I'd known less than a week? Why would I compromise my morals for someone whose world was built on violence I didn't understand? Because he'd protected his daughter by staying away when it cost him everything. Because he'd looked at my broken pieces and seen someone worth keeping safe. Because in a life where I'd learned to trust no one, something in me trusted him completely. Because you're trying to be better than your world requires, I said simply. And maybe I am too. His phone buzzed. 22 minutes remaining. I can end this, he said, voice dropping to something raw and honest. I know where Victor is hiding. I have the resources. I can make him disappear before he ever sends that evidence. You mean kill him? I mean neutralize the threat permanently. I should have recoiled. Should have seen the monster everyone feared. But standing there watching Dominic calculate the cost of protection, I saw something else. A man trying to save everyone while knowing he'd inevitably fail someone. What does that make you? I asked softly. The thing I've always been. The thing my daughter can't know. The thing that keeps people safe by doing what they can't stomach. His hand found my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But you asked for truth. So here it is. I will find Victor. I will find Jason. And I will make sure neither of them ever threatens anyone again. That's who I am, Naomi. That's what choosing me means. The words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something darker unfurl in my chest. Not quite approval, but understanding. Maybe even relief. I don't want Jason dead, I said carefully. But I won't cry if Victor stops breathing. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Like I'd just passed some test I hadn't known I was taking. His phone rang, not a text, an actual call. Victor, Dominic said, answering on speaker. Dominic. And Naomi, I assume you're listening. Victor's voice was warm, conversational. 10 minutes now. Have you decided who burns? We're still discussing terms. There are no terms. There's only inevitability. A pause. But I'm a reasonable man. So here's my final offer. Naomi comes to me, alone, unarmed. We have a conversation about her future, about what she's willing to testify to. And maybe, the evidence never reaches the police. She's not going anywhere near you. Then she's going to prison. And so are you. And your daughter. Victor's voice went soft. Well, accidents happen to children of incarcerated mob bosses. You know this. The threat was explicit. Elena. Dominic's face went white, then red, then utterly blank. The kind of emptiness that preceded violence. I'm going to die, I said. Naomi, he won't kill me. I'm worth more alive. I took the phone from Dominic's hand. Where? Victor gave me an address in Brighton Beach. 1 hour, come alone, or the evidence goes out immediately. And Naomi? Wear something nice. This is an important conversation about your future. He hung up. Dominic grabbed my shoulders. You're not doing this. He'll hurt Elena. You know he will. I'll hide her. Move her. I have protocols. That take time you don't have. I pulled free, moved toward the bedroom. I'm going. You can follow from a distance. Have Marcus nearby. Do whatever tactical thing you need to do. But I'm walking through that door first. This is insane. This is the only move that doesn't end with your daughter in danger. I stopped in the doorway, looked back. You told me you protect what's yours. Well, I'm protecting what's mine now. And like it or not, you're mine. The admission hung in the air between us. Terrifying and true. The restaurant in Brighton Beach was called Tatiana, a Russian supper club with red velvet booths and crystal chandeliers that had seen better decades. It was empty when I arrived at 7 p.m., the dinner rush still an hour away. Just Victor and 4 men who watched me enter with the dead eyes of people who'd stopped feeling years ago. Victor stood when I walked in, gentleman manners from another era. He was smaller than I'd imagined, maybe 5'8", late 50s, with kind eyes that made his cruelty more obscene. He wore a cardigan like someone's grandfather, not the architect of psychological terrorism. Naomi, he said warmly, gesturing to the booth across from him. Thank you for coming. I know this must be frightening. I sat because my legs were shaking too badly to stand. Where's Jason? Nearby. Safe, for now. Victor poured tea from a silver samoset, the ritual oddly domestic. You look like your mother. I found photos. She was beautiful too, before the cancer. The mention of my mother, dead 6 years, a wound that never quite healed, felt like a violation. Don't. I apologize. I simply wanted you to know that I've invested considerable time understanding you. He slid the tea across. I don't wish to hurt you, Naomi. Truly. You're collateral in a war you didn't start. Then let me go. I will. After we talk. Victor leaned back, studying me with genuine curiosity. Tell me, do you love him? Dominic? The question caught me off guard. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Love. The word felt too big for what I felt. The pull toward Dominic that defied logic. The way his brokenness echoed mine, how his protection felt less like a cage and more like permission to remember I deserved safety. It wasn't love yet, but it could be, given time. Given a chance to become something real instead of something forged in crisis. I admitted, if we survived this. Victor smiled. Pleased. Honesty? Rare and refreshing. He sipped his tea. Here's my problem. Dominic took everything from me. My empire, my reputation, my sons. His voice cracked slightly. Both boys died in the warehouse fire. 19 and 22. They were in the wrong place. Didn't know the building was compromised. Dominic didn't check. Didn't care. The grief in his face was real. Devastating. For a moment, he wasn't a monster. Just a father who'd lost everything. I'm sorry, I whispered and meant it. Are you? Sorry enough to help me. Victor leaned forward. I don't want Dominic dead. I want him destroyed from within. I want him to lose everything he values while staying alive to witness it. His empire, his daughter's respect. You. What do you want from me? Testimony. Tell the authorities Dominic threatened you, coerced you, made you complicit in his crimes. Play the terrified victim. It won't be difficult. You're quite good at it already. His voice stayed gentle, but the cruelty underneath sharpened. In exchange, Jason lives. The evidence disappears. You walk away free. I thought of Dominic's face when he talked about Elena. The way he'd chosen to stay away from his daughter because proximity meant danger. How he'd looked at me on that balcony and seen someone worth protecting, even when it cost him everything. And if I refuse, then everyone suffers. The police get their evidence, Dominic goes to prison, you go to prison, Jason dies, and little Elena, Victor's smile was poison. She grows up visiting her father behind glass, knowing he chose a bartender over her safety. The manipulation was perfect. Each pressure point carefully selected. He'd studied me well enough to know that guilt was my weakness. The belief that my choices rippled outward, hurting people who didn't deserve the consequences. I'd felt that guilt with Jason, wondering if I'd been too difficult, too sensitive. Felt it leaving, wondering if I was abandoning someone who needed help. Felt it running, wondering if changing my name made me a coward. But sitting across from Victor, I realized something that shifted everything. His sons, deaths weren't Dominic's moral failing. They were Victor's. He'd built an empire on trafficking and violence, raised his boys in that world, and when it burned, he blamed the match instead of the kindling. No, I said quietly. Victor's expression didn't change. No. You want me to feel responsible for everyone's pain? To believe that if I just sacrifice myself, everyone else stays safe. I met his eyes and my voice steadied. But that's a lie. You'll hurt them anyway, because this isn't about justice or protection. It's about making Dominic suffer. Naomi, I won't be your weapon. I stood, legs still shaking but holding. Do whatever you're going to do. Send the evidence. Hurt Jason. Come after me. But I won't help you destroy someone who's trying to be better than his circumstances allow. For the first time, Victor's mask cracked. Anger flashed across his face, cold and lethal. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. I turned toward the door, made it 3 steps before Victor's men moved to block my path. Sit down, Victor said, voice losing all pretense of warmth. No, You think Dominic is coming to save you? I've been jamming all signals within 3 blocks. He has no idea where you are. No one does. Victor stood, and suddenly the grandfather disappeared, replaced by something ancient and merciless. You're not leaving until you agree to testify. And if that requires persuasion, the door exploded inward. Not Dominic FBI agents, at least a dozen, weapons drawn, shouting commands that turned the restaurant into chaos. Victor's men reached for guns. The agents moved faster. And through it all, I saw Marcus in the doorway, massive and implacable, holding a phone that was broadcasting everything, the conversation, the threats, Victor's confession about the fabricated evidence. I hadn't been recording Victor. Marcus had been recording everything since I walked in. Victor's face went white with comprehension. She came wired, Marcus said simply. Audio and video. Every word you said about fabricating evidence, coercion, conspiracy, all of it admissible. I touched my collar, felt the tiny device I'd forgotten Marcus had clipped there in the car. Dominic's final insurance policy, the thing he'd never told me about because he knew I'd refuse. He'd let me walk into danger, but he'd made sure I walked in armed. The FBI kept me in a conference room for 11 hours, asking the same questions in different configurations, testing the consistency of my story like archaeologists searching for fractures in ancient pottery. I told them everything. Victor's surveillance, the fabricated evidence, Jason's involvement, how Dominic had protected me without asking for anything except honesty. Agent Morrison, 40-something, tired eyes, wedding ring worn thin, listened with the patience of someone who'd heard every lie the world offered and learned to recognize the shape of truth. You understand you're admitting to knowing about Carver's criminal activities? She said around hour 7, sliding coffee across the table like a peace offering. I'm admitting I was targeted because someone thought I mattered to him. I wrapped my hands around the cup, grateful for warmth. Everything I know about Dominic's business, I learned after Victor made me a weapon. Before that, I was just a bartender who called the wrong number. And now, the question was heavier than it sounded. Now I was the woman who'd worn a wire into a mob meeting, who'd let herself be bait in someone else's trap, who'd stood in front of Viktor Volkov and refused to be his instrument of revenge, even knowing it might cost everything. Now I'm someone trying to survive the consequences of being noticed, I said. They released me at dawn. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, immovable as always, but something in his face softened when he saw me. Boss wants to see you? Is he? He's fine. Worried. He's been calling every 20 minutes. Marcus almost smiled. Never seen him worried before. It's unsettling. Dominic's penthouse felt different in the gray morning light. Less like a fortress, more like a place where someone actually lived. He stood at the window where I'd first found him at 4 a.m. Same position, same glass of whiskey. Like the hours between had been a held breath finally released. Naomi. Just my name. But the relief in his voice cracked something in my chest. I crossed the room. Didn't stop until I was close enough to see the exhaustion carved into his face, the fear he'd been carrying while I was gone. You wired me without telling me. Yes. I could have given it away. Tipped Victor off. You wouldn't have. He finally looked at me, and his eyes held something raw and unguarded. You're the worst liar I've ever met. If you'd known about the wire, you would have been too conscious of it. This way, you were just yourself. Brave and reckless and completely genuine. I'm not brave. I was terrified the entire time. Brave isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing while you're afraid. His hand found my face, and I leaned into the touch like coming home. You saved my daughter tonight. Victor's in federal custody. His entire organization is being dismantled. Elena is safe because you walked into that restaurant. The words settled over me, heavy and precious. What about Jason? In custody. He was working with Victor voluntarily, hoping to use the chaos to get close to you again. Dominic's jaw tightened. He's facing conspiracy charges. He won't bother you again. I should have felt something. Vindication, closure, the complicated satisfaction of watching someone who hurt you face consequences. But all I felt was tired. I don't want to think about him anymore. Then don't. You're free, Naomi. Victor can't touch you. Jason can't touch you. You're not anyone's message or weapon or collateral. His thumb traced my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You're just a woman who deserves to live without fear. The word, free, felt foreign and fragile. I'd spent 2 years running from Jason, then a week trapped in Victor's game. Freedom was a language I'd forgotten how to speak. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you. Dominic stepped back, giving me space, and the distance felt like respect. The FBI is prosecuting Victor. My involvement is complicated. I'm cooperating, providing evidence about his operations. It'll take months, maybe years. My businesses are being audited. I'm under investigation. It's going to be messy. Are you going to prison? Probably not. My lawyers are very good, and Victor's vendetta left more evidence against him than against me. He smiled faintly. But my reputation is destroyed. The kind of power I had, it's gone. I'm just a businessman with questionable associates now, trying to go legitimate. Is that what you want? The question seemed to surprise him. I want Elena to know her father. I want to build things instead of break them. He stopped, and something vulnerable crossed his face. I want to take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not a crisis or a negotiation. Just two people learning who they are when they're not running from danger. My heart stuttered. A date. Only if you want it to be. I thought about the woman I'd been a week ago, afraid, alone. Convinced safety meant staying invisible. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who'd faced her past and chosen her future, who'd walked into danger and walked out free. I want it, I said. But on my terms. No bodyguards unless I ask. No decisions made for me. No protection through control. Agreed. And I need time. To find my own apartment, my own life. To figure out who I am when I'm not someone's target or someone's responsibility. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. How much time? 3 months? Maybe 6. I'll know when I'm ready. He nodded slowly, accepting the boundary even though I could see it cost him. And in the meantime, we're friends who survived something terrible together. Friends who call sometimes, who get coffee, who learn each other slowly instead of through crisis. I stepped closer, rose on my toes, and kissed his cheek, brief and chaste and full of promise. Friends who might become something more if we're patient. I can be patient, he said quietly. I'm learning how. 3 months later, I stood in my new apartment in Park Slope. 1 bedroom, good light, a kitchen where the pipes worked. I'd paid the deposit myself with money from the security consulting job Dominic had helped me find, work that used my experience without compromising my independence. The knock came at 7 p.m., punctual and polite. Dominic stood in my doorway with flowers, pale pink roses, elegant and understated, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the expensive suits. He looked younger somehow, less like the dangerous man I'd met, and more like the person he was trying to become. Is this a date? I asked, echoing our first real conversation. Only if you want it to be. I did want it. But more than that, I wanted what came after, the slow building of something real, something chosen instead of forced by circumstance. We walked through Brooklyn as winter settled over the city, talking about small things and large ones, learning the ordinary details that build intimacy. He told me about Elena's last visit, how she'd asked if he had a girlfriend, how he'd said maybe someday. I told him about the literacy program I'd started volunteering with, teaching adults to read, finally using the gift I'd buried years ago. We were 2 broken people learning to be whole, not through saving each other, but through choosing each other every day. Some wrong numbers save your life by reminding you it's yours to live. Some dangerous men teach you that real strength is choosing to be gentle. And some love stories start in chaos but build themselves slowly, deliberately, in the quiet spaces between crises, in coffee dates and patient conversations, in boundaries respected and time given, in the revolutionary act of letting someone see you and choosing to stay anyway. I'd called the wrong number that desperate night, but standing on a Brooklyn corner with Dominic's hand in mine, the city glittering around us like possibility, I realized maybe it was the right number all along. Just at the wrong time, in the wrong way, for all the right reasons. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.